People who have been following my Twitter have noticed that I've been building a secret prop for the last month or two. Well, the prop is done and now it's time to show you all how we built it. Ladies and gentlemen and others, today we're going to build the Green Rangers Dragon Dagger. No problem. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Lewis, you already have a Green Ranger Dragon Dagger. We've seen you use it on your show. Well, that's true. I do indeed have a Dragon Dagger flute that I use to beat the Countdown monster. However, that one is a toy, one of the originals from the mid-90s. However, after discovering some awesome fan art suggesting a gun version of the dagger, I decided to hunt down another dagger and modify it to that design. However, I discovered that I really lucked out on the dagger I got off of eBay. Some of these things go upwards of $60. I put the modified gun idea on the back burner when I realized I should really try to up my production values and get a bigger dagger that was more like the one on Power Rangers. However, prices for a replica tended to go anywhere from $80 to a few $100. Well, never one to be discouraged by a little thing called reality, I decided, screw it, I'll just build one myself. Hell, it's a popular cosplayer's costume, so obviously there must be tutorials online on how to build the thing. Right? But you know what I found? Zilch. Nada. The closest I came was a professional prop builder who made a cast version of the dagger who detailed some of the steps in building it. Well, this one goes out to all of you cosplayers out there who always wanted a Green Ranger dagger, but just couldn't afford it. Here's our shopping list. 1/2 inch diameter PVC tube, 1 3/4 inch diameter PVC tube, 1/2 inch PVC cap, 1 3/4 inch PVC 4-way, 1/2 inch copper stop end, 1 metal U-bolt, a cake frosting dispenser tip, or a plastic glue cap or something like that, masking tape, tag board or poster board, styrene, wire, foam board, plastic furniture glides, modeling cement, 1 toy recorder I got at Walmart, and a hot glue gun. Some optional items you can also include 3 doorbells, 3 copper crimp rings, marker caps, and twist ties. First, cut a 5-inch length from the 3/4 inch PVC tube. This will be the hilt of the dagger. It should be roughly the same size as the toy one. What makes this dagger different from the toy is the blade length. Cut the PVC cap in half and attach it to one end of the 5-inch length. I used model cement to lock them together, though hot glue should work fine as well. Now take the other 5-inch length from the 1/2 inch diameter tube and use glue or modeling cement to attach the copper stop to one end. After it dries, use the hot glue or cement to attach the frosting tip to the copper stop. Slip the handle onto one side of the PVC 4-way. It should fit in snugly without a need to glue. Cut off the mouthpiece of the toy recorder. You will need to glue this piece into the right side of the PVC 4-way. Now you can also use a T-shaped connector for this, but I'm going for the 4-way since it'll make a better fit for the round part we're putting on the center of it. Speaking of which, cut off the other side of the 4-way connector, but leave some of that side on for the centerpiece, I'd say a couple centimeters. Wrap masking tape around the base of the blade pole for a bit until it'll slip into the top hole. If you put on too much, don't worry. Just start unwrapping a little bit at a time until it gets in there snugly. Remember, you want this thing to be a snug fit so it stays in there nicely. This way, we won't have to fight with layers of glue or epoxy or the like to try to center it out. Now, we will glue this down with hot glue, however, to secure it. Congratulations, you now have the basic frame of the dagger. Believe it or not, this was the easy part. Now, originally, I planned to use cardboard for the blade itself, as well as modeling clay around the edge, kind of like how the toy uses rubber, but it wasn't working out because I couldn't shape or smooth out the clay properly. To confound matters, the center pole for the blade, because it had the copper connector in it, made an awkward shape to cut the blade out of. Thus, I turned to the services of Amethyst Angel, or as I like to call her, the Prop Lady. She's a professional cosplay costume maker, so for any anime fans out there who want to go to a convention in spiffy armor or carry 7-foot buster swords, she's the one to turn to.
Like other props like this, I start off by making a life-size paper cutout of the dagger in Photoshop and print it off. From there, I decided there were 2 real parts to the blade, the centerpiece and the edge. I cut out the centerpiece using foam board and then put tag board or poster board, which you can find pretty much at any department store or craft store, on top as a skin. I layered 2 pieces of it together to provide a bit more stability. From there, I traced around the center pole to make it fit as exactly as I could and filled in the gaps with the hot glue. Using 3mm craft foam, I cut out 4 pieces that I then put around the edges of the pole to elevate it a bit and use that for a bit more detailing. To add some more stability to the tip of the blade, I added 14 gauge wire to the tip on both sides as a bit of a frame. Now it's time for the outer shell of the blade. Using the paper I had cut out earlier, I cut out the outer edge to make a template out of pegboard that'll then be used for the final dagger piece in styrene. Since some of the prop versions of the dagger that we found online had some detailing on the top, I also cut out those holes and placed another piece of styrene underneath them to give the two-level effect. I made two of the styrene blade edge pieces, one for each side of the blade, and then glued them on. Once they were glued on, I took a utility knife and just used it to even out the edges, making it smoother and in general giving it a more professional feel. It does take a bit of patience, but it's worth it to really give the blade a better look. Additionally, you can also use hobby sandpaper, the kind of sandpaper sold in craft stores next to modeling paints and kits, to smooth out the edges of your prop. Once the blade was done, we moved on to the side piping of the dagger. We used a piece of thin, 1/4-inch PEX plastic pipe for this section that we heated and then bent into the proper shape. It should be noted, however, that it took forever to get this thing into the proper shape, and even then it came out of place quite a few times during construction. Speaking of getting the piping into place, I cut a small hole in the furniture glides where the piping could fit onto either side, and then glued the glides down onto the center of the 4-way cross. Now we get to the part that's probably the most difficult and time-consuming in terms of getting it to shape right. Using epoxy putty, I filled in the hole on the side of the dagger and made the main body of the blade more circular. I also shaped another piece of epoxy putty as the final part of the tube around the glide and did some detailing on it based on what was on the toy version of the dagger. Safety tip: remember to wear latex or vinyl gloves if you decide to work with epoxy putty, and use it in a well-ventilated area. You can dip your finger into some water and use it to shape and smooth down the surface of the epoxy, as I did. It takes about 3 or 4 hours to harden, so try to set it upright somewhere during that time so that nothing touches it or disrupts it or anything. Afterwards, it can be sanded down as you wish, and then you can add the rest of the detailing as you see fit.
After getting the dagger home with me, I discovered that the piping had once again fallen out of place. We discovered that actually we had accidentally acquired something called PEX, and it doesn't stay bent when heated. As such, I went back to the metal U-ring I had planned on using to begin with. Thankfully, with the holes already made for the PEX tube, it fit in perfectly and just needed to be cut down on both sides, which Home Depot was happy to do since I lacked the proper cutting tools.
I was able to get the PEX tube to bend after putting 3 14-gauge wires into it. I was even able to bend it while it was cold, but that was a pain in the ass to do. If heated, the pipe should bend a little more easily, but watch out so that you don't burn your fingers on the hot wire or the hot plastic while doing so.
Once the U-ring is inside, just put lots of hot glue around it to secure it in place, and you've got yourself the dagger itself. Now here's where your dagger is probably going to differ from person to person: the detailing. In order to get the flute buttons, I just used doorbells that I gutted so it was just the shell, the button, and the spring that I glued together. The downside of that is the fact that I didn't quite get the buttons to go down straight. Still, as a prop, the buttons work, and that's what's important. The more advanced among you can probably solve any of that stuff on your own, though an alternative to the doorbells if you want to stay on budget is to use small nail glides and compression springs. I also used copper crimp rings to slide the doorbells into so that the edges on the top weren't hanging out over nothing. After that, prime it, paint it, and detail it using hot glue or whatever material you wish, and bam! You've got yourself your very own Green Ranger Dragon Dagger. Personally, the detailing I used on the blade pole consisted of pieces of marker caps taken from old dried out markers and twist ties. I didn't do the detailings on the handle, but then again, that's something you can decide for yourself. So there you have it, the Green Ranger Dragon Dagger. It's going to come in handy in the next few months, I can assure you. In the meantime, check out proplady.livejournal.com to check out some more of her awesome stuff, get some tutorials on how to build some other cosplay stuff, and maybe commission her to make some costume stuff for you. In the meantime, keep on watching. Just a quick tip, after I primed it, I used a coat of black spray paint, plastic spray paint to work on it. Then I detailed the rest of it, the silver, the gold, all that fun stuff, using enamel paints. And enamel paints work really well since they're designed to be used for models and everything like that. Make sure you have brush cleaner, because enamel paint does not just come off with water. I did use acrylic paint for the green part, but the problem with acrylic paint is that it tends to kind of peel off like a separate skin if you poke it enough, unless you're using it on the right kind of materials.